Libby, it is good to see you. I wanted to bring you in. Obviously, we were covering the Brown University shooting situation. There's obviously been some speculation regarding if she was targeted or not. We don't have any further information on if that was the case. So, regardless, I was making the point that criminals are killing Americans, and this action, fundamentally, either way, is an attempt, or really a successful attempt here, to disrupt this God ordained order that we have in this country. And so I was saying whether or not this was targeted, either way, this illustrates the point that this rot that's really overtaken our country needs to be rooted out. It's so prevalent, and it's really disturbing. And we were talking about the situation in Australia. This is a problem that's this sort of blanketed ideology is all over the West. Just this self hatred, this bitterness, this envy, this sort of anti God ideology. I wanted to bring you in for your initial reaction to this shooting in Brown University and sort of what you think this says about the moment that America is in.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Tate. Right after this happened, or after the fallout from yesterday on Sunday, my dad texted me about it, and he asked me if I had seen the news about the shooting coming out of Brown University. We're from New England. My family's from New England, and so we were talking about it. And both my dad and I were on the same team as regard to what's going on here, which is we have a real self-hate problem
Hmm.
in the United States. And I think that if you look back at the 20th century and the existentialist movement and the atheist movement that really came into the fore and have taken over our civil discourse, right? We essentially have an atheist civil discourse. Even now,
Yeah.
when people are running for office, they don't tell you about their church or their
Yep.
pastor or their deep faith, whether or not they were putting that on or not. They don't even tell us about it anymore. Instead, what we have when we remove God, what we end up with is a self loathing, because
Hmm.
perhaps the natural state of humanity is self hate. And when you look at what the belief in God provides us, it provides us an opportunity to share love, to be loved, to share love, and to love in return. And so when we take that away, we deprive humanity of that impetus to see each other as beautiful children of God. And I don't know, none of us know who is responsible for this attack at Brown. We saw that a gunman, a suspect, a person of interest, what have you, was brought in and then was released. And so now we have a situation where Providence officials and officials in Rhode Island are telling us that Providence is safe and that people are safe, but also that a gunman is at large.
Yeah.
So that doesn't particularly make any sense either.
Yeah. I mean, it's we're getting a replay of the Boston bombing situation where they're simultaneously telling you everything's good, everything's fine. But by the way, there's this mass killer that's on the loose. We don't know who he is. We don't know if he's going to strike again. Uh, it really seems like a total incompetence from local authorities that they brought in a guy, released all his information and everything, basically ruined this guy's life by all accounts. Who knows what sort of threats he's receiving? All for that, just to release the guy. And I don't know how he's supposed to go back to life after this. I mean,
Yeah. Well, that his name was leaked. And so in the press conference last night, you had the Attorney General for Rhode Island, Peter Nerona, saying that he thought that it was terrible that this man's name was leaked, and
mhm,
he had the utmost confidence and faith in the Providence Police Department that they could get this done. And he, in fact, went on to, at some length in this press conference, to praise the Providence Police, despite the fact that they had got the wrong guy, that it was
mhm.
36 hours later, that a gunman is on the loose, that no one has really any leads. And when they were asked by reporters, what about, can you release some other videos so we can look at this guy? It turns out that they did not have cameras in place in the engineering building where this gunman went in and opened fire that showed his face. They do not have a visual on this suspect. All they really have is that image of him, walking down the street and away, I think down Hope Street in Providence. They just have his back all bundled
Yeah,
up, right? Anyone in the Northeast know it's been freezing.
yeah.
So, yeah, they don't have anything. I don't know how you go out there and praise your cops after they screw up like this.
Well, yeah, they've come out and they've said we don't. He's probably not even in the state anymore. Rhode Island's not a big state. It's not hard to get out. I mean, who knows if he's even in the country anymore? It's been
Yeah.
a few days. I mean, it's just total disaster. I was kind of linking the obviously the Bondi Beach shooting in Australia to this. It's not obviously a overlap of ideology necessarily, but it's overlapping a general ideology. This is the point I was making. Is the self-hatred that you're talking about. The same thing in Australia. You only import people sort of with this background if you hate the native population, because from my perspective these sorts of things are inevitable. Europe, the situation in Europe has demonstrated this quite extensively. Even here we've seen these terrorist attacks. And in the United States it's all part of the same coin. It's self-hatred, it's a rebellion against God. Again, I'll make the point whether or not she was targeted. It is all in a way um a political killing, because this happens because our officials have failed to uphold the structure historically in the United States that provided people with purpose, provided them with meaning, and there's a vacuum, and that vacuum has to be filled with something. I don't know if you agree with my analysis. That was just sort of my take on the whole
Yeah, I
thing.
mean, I don't think that it's necessarily the government's responsibility. In fact, I don't think it's the government's responsibility at all to provide us with a religion, right? I mean,
Right.
American, I'm very 1A on that. But I do think that it is up to the government to not continuously squash religion, to not
Yes.
make up lies about the separation of church and state, which ended up saying that you can't even have a morning prayer in school.
Hmm.
I'm thinking of Charlie Kirk's words when I say that, it's not the government to protect us from religion. We're supposed to have the freedom for our religion, but not freedom from it, right?
Right.
I don't think those are the same things. And Charlie said something similar to that. Not quoting exactly, but I know that when I was a kid, we would have a moment of silence in the morning where people could take that moment of prayer if they wanted. Not everybody did. People were embarrassed of their religion. We were a bunch of middle school kids and what have you. But I do think that the government has gone out of its way to make sure that religion is derided, that belief in God by Christians, mind you, only really by Christians, is derided and is seen as some sort of weird mystical thing while they
Hmm.
uphold Islam, they uphold Buddhism and Judaism and any of these other
Yep.
religions that make their way. I mean, if there were a bunch of Zoroastrians in the United States, the government would love them,
Yeah.
right? They'd be all over that. And so I think that that is a problem. And I think that conservative Christians who have been the ones upholding Christianity for decades since the atheist secularism took over the Democrat Party have been remiss in
Hmm.
their advocacy for Christianity. You have a lot of people who keep their faith to themselves, who don't feel that it's their responsibility to advocate for God and for God's love, who even don't really pass it on to their kids, right? I mean, part
Yeah.
of what we see in a resurgence of faith among Gen Z, which there's been some polling to that effect, is because their parents haven't really been taking them.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that parents instill religious values in their kids because otherwise, and for very fundamental reasons, right? I mean, there's the God reason, there's the faith reason, there's the it's true reason, which are reasons that I have, but there are also much deeper, or maybe not deeper, but there are additional reasons. For example, how are you supposed to make decisions if you don't know what set of morals you are bouncing those decisions off of? So if you have decisions to make, if you're in middle school or high school, if you're a human being, you say, okay, should I kill this person? Well, let's see. Let me think. What are some moral guidelines?
Yeah.
Well, you've got the 10 Commandments, killer set of moral guidelines, right? Like super solid. You've got rules in there that make sense for every situation. For Christians, if you follow Jesus Christ, then you've got the Beatitudes, New Testament. Did you visit me while I was in prison? Oh, no, I didn't. Maybe let me think about that. Let's show some grace, right?
Hmm.
So you have together the 10 Commandments, the Beatitudes. You have a great way to make decisions, whether or not you decide that you're going to go to church every Sunday or not. Great decision making tools. And I think that we have lost that. We have imported a cultural relativism, or we have
Yeah.
generated it rather for ourselves, where we have decided that all cultures are equal. And it doesn't take very far to look to see that no, not all cultures are equal. In fact, Christianity, Judaism, and then Christianity, huge societal development moving forward. We get rid of child sacrifice,
Yeah.
right? We get rid of a lot of really punitive things. We bring grace in, and
Hmm.
we ended up with peaceful, high trust societies, both in the United States and in Europe, that are now completely crumbling. Look at the situation we have right now in Syria, right? So we have this guy, Syrian army guy, right, with the new government, who of course which is run by a terrorist. So we have the Syrian guy who is pledged to the Islamic State. He was
Mm.
pledged to the Islamic State, just like the kid in Australia who
Yeah.
opened fire, who was known to authorities since 2019 because he had pledged to the Islamic State. So you have the Syrian guy who opens fire on American troops because He's not there for Syria, and he was working with the American troops. Why are we working with people who hate us?
Yeah.
And if you track back, right, to Afghanistan in 2021, Biden botched withdrawal, Islamic State, killed 13 of our guys. Now we have two more guys from Iowa killed because of this kind of belief system where we should be teaming up with terrorists to save democracy in places that hate us. Why are we doing this? And then, of course, what did we have just recently? It was an Afghan man who opened fire on
Mhm.
our DC National Guard. Two West Virginians were killed. So we are importing these ideologies of hate. I think you're definitely right about that. We are bringing them here. We are mixing them in with our, anti-God woke values that result in the kind of self-hate that lures Americans into castrating their children and killing millions of babies, unborn babies every year. And that's where we're at. We are in a self hating America when we should be loving our country and upholding each other, upholding our countrymen as beautiful children of God.
Yeah, I mean, we saw with Afghanistan, with really our entire foreign policy over the last few decades, where you're seeing the consequences of this ideology of our ruling class who believe that people are just simply interchangeable cogs, that they're not designed in a particular way that will, have somewhat predictable behaviors because of the way that they are. They believe that you can just go into Afghanistan and just set up a democracy and everyone there will just nod along and be like, oh yeah, this is it's like no, people are the way they are. The cultural relativism is just inherently destructive because, for whatever reason, we can get into it. But the way that Afghan society is structured, democracy is not really going to click. And this
Hmm.
ideology is just destroying us at every end. It's resulting in an immigration policy that's importing people that hate us. It's resulting in the youth having zero, North Star in their life. And then and many times it leads to these sort of leftist radicalization. And you're seeing a foreign policy that's getting Americans killed and, innocent people overseas killed because of this slavish devotion to this idea that they'll just nod along as soon as we introduce the miracle of liberal democracy, Western liberal democracy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And they're not, right? They're not interested in that. In fact, when you look at Islamic extremism, they have a North Star, and part of that North Star is killing a whole bunch of us.
Yeah.
That's the goal. So why are we working with these people? Why are we importing these people if they're not interested in becoming American?
Hmm.
Now, there are for sure plenty of people in the Middle East and, Asia and Afghanistan and wherever else, who are Muslim and they are in favor of Western values. But we're not doing a good job of vetting those people.
Yeah.
When I grew up, one of my closest friends in high school was Muslim. Her family was Muslim. They were very strict. Okay, they were American.
Hmm.
That was where they were. They were never going somewhere else. And I think that what we have now, for example, this guy, this Pakistani national in Australia, he had come in on a student visa some time ago, and then he transferred it 2001, I think, to a partnership visa. So that must mean he got married. But he kept his return visa the whole time. Even as his children were born in Australia,
Yeah.
he kept his return visa. He never pledged to be
Hmm.
Australian. He never integrated properly into Australian life, even though he told his family that he was taking his son on a scuba trip
Mm.
over the weekend, and instead they went and set up a massacre. So there's something going on there where even he had come to Australia, I think in 1998. So that's a good long time to be in another place and generate hate toward these people. What is he doing there? Why is this something that Australia is in favor of? And Australia, of course, has been the site of immigration troubles itself.
Yeah, well, it's so frustrating the response from Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, where he's identifying, okay, yes, anti-Semitism drove this attack, but he's like browbeating the Australian public like this widespread issue, and this happens globally where they treat it like, oh no, this hatred's coming from all angles, and it's like, pretty much everyone in Australia is not conducting attacks like this. This is a very specific group of people that have been brought in, and the only defense that I would say, this sort of neoliberal regime has is what we saw it on full display with the Piers Morgan Tucker Carlson interview, where Piers Morgan, he just kept pointing back to the food. He was like, "Yeah, but the food, like the
Mhm,
food in London was terrible, and now it's great." Bill Maher has
mhm.
said something similar in the past, and it's like, is that all you've got? Is there, what they're basically saying is there's a cultural deficiency in these countries, and you need these people to come here and spice things up, and we're saying like, this sort of spicing up that which I don't think we need. I think these Western cultures are obviously some of the most dynamic in the world. Our prosperity is evidence of that. Um, is the food really worth it, Piers? I mean, we're picking up bodies off of Bondi Beach as a result to give you your Deliveroo curry. I mean, this is just
Yeah,
absolutely
and the
insane.
thing too is, I mean, if you look at just to play devil's advocate for a moment, if you look at the cuisine of Bondi Beach, there's like restaurants called Bondi Beach all over the world because of
Yeah.
that cuisine, like, that kind of fish and chips. But the thing too is that, yes, cuisine is great. I love when, we have a million different kinds of restaurants in this city. Not in this city, that's New York City, but whatever. You can say, what do you want to eat tonight? And it's Mexican, Italian, shawarma, take your pick of international cuisine. But that is not ethos, right?
Right.
That is flavor.
Yeah.
And flavor is great. And ethos is what's really important. So when you have people coming to the United States, go ahead and open your shawarma place, but become American. Send your kids to American schools. Teach them the value of this nation. Teach them how this nation is what allowed you to get that restaurant open and to facilitate a
Yeah.
great lifestyle. Food is interesting, clothing is interesting, fashion is great. These are all cultural markers, but they do not have to be deeper than
Hmm.
all of that. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be more than that. And I think what we have too is a situation where a lot of immigrants to Western nations over the years, and I'm thinking specifically America because I'm American, and let's face it, that's really the only nation I super care
So
about.
true.
But when we look at that and people coming to the US, why did people come? You had Irish coming because there was famine. They needed a new place to eat. You had Italians coming for a variety of reasons, but the country was not doing great. Now, what you have are people coming from countries where the culture is deteriorating. And instead of leaving a bunch of that culture behind, they're bringing it with us. They're bringing it with them. They're bringing that ethos and saying, "Here I am in the U.S. Now I hate America here too."
Hmm.
And why is that? Why come here if that's what's going on? Just stay in your own country
Real.
and make it better instead of coming and taking our high trust society and making everything worse.
Yeah, not to mention, like, you can just look these like, if that's really Pierce's priority, I was pointing this out earlier, like, if you go to Tokyo, I've been to Tokyo, I don't know if you've been to Tokyo, they have some of the best international cuisine offerings on display, and it's a very homogenous country, and you go to, like, a pizza restaurant, you go to, like, Italian restaurant, and it's gonna be Japanese chefs in there because this is really shocking, I think, to people like Pierce Morgan, but you can just, like, look these recipes up online. You can travel to these countries and learn how to cook these recipes. It's not like rocket science here. So
Right.
even then, it's like, okay, if that's Pierce, we'll get you your food. Just let us have a little time to get this going. But
Yeah,
with
for
that,
sure.
I wanted to ask you for your thoughts on this. So JD Vance, going back to I think specifically the Brown shooting. That's where the discourse is around at the moment. He was addressing sort of leftist violence, and he was attributing this to these judges that are in place in a lot of these blue jurisdiction that are hamstringing our ability to sort of seek justice and ensure that these sorts of things don't happen. He addressed specifically the blue slip. This is obviously something Trump's been railing on a lot recently, is the blue slip system, which in short allows a senator from a state to issue a injunction or sort of a suggestion to the Judiciary Committee whenever a judge is seeking to be appointed and voted on, and it allows them to object and say, no, this judge wouldn't represent my constituents well, et cetera, et cetera. And this system, when it was introduced, worked fairly well. This is the case with a lot of systems in the United States. Is when they were
Mhm.
introduced, it made sense in the context. But as things evolve, people began to weaponize it. It became a political tool. And so JD Vance was pointing out that the slip system is the reason why they're struggling to get judges in there that will actually be able to enforce the law and enact justice in these jurisdictions. Um, Obviously, the Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley being the chair, this is not a mechanism that's like in law necessarily. This is
Mhm.
something that the Judiciary Committee can just stop you know, acknowledging and adhering to. It's optional. Chuck Grassley has defended the blue slip. He's saying, well, during the Biden administration, we utilized it. And this kind of goes back to the point of like, do a lot of these people not understand the moment that we're in? Do they not understand what time it is? It's like, are we really going to
Yeah.
adhere? Matt Walsh made this point. He's like, are we really going to adhere to these systems that are just kind of like handshake agreements when our country is being destroyed. Do you have any thoughts on the blue slips specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's not just that people don't know what time it is, they don't even know that there's a clock. And it's very frustrating to see this happen, you know? And I think that it's true that any lawmaker is going to take any opportunity to use their political clout to, get their way or do the thing that they think is going to get them more donors or be more politically expedient for them. And I think that's really a shame. And I think that, we need to see lawmakers go back to the thing where what they should be doing is representing their constituents. Congressmen far too often and senators forget that their job is to represent the people. They are our voice,
Hmm.
and they take too much of their time and effort to represent their own interests. And it's really a shame. As far as the judiciary goes, I think that we have some serious problems in our judiciary across the country right now. We've had problems in immigration court. 8 immigration judges were recently fired in New York City. There's problems there with backlogs of cases. I think in 2023 there were like a million backlog asylum cases in the system because of what the Biden administration had done. And you do have a lot of activist judges on the bench who are doing things because it's what they think is important and not what is going on with law. You see, what's her name, Talwani in Boston. You see Boasberg, right, in
Hmm.
what is he, Virginia or Maryland? I forget which one. They're both like kind of the same state to me.
Sure.
But if you look, you have a lot of this, and it's a problem. I'm not super familiar with the blue state system. After this, I'm definitely going to go look it up. But I think that it's an issue, and that when judges are appointed, they need to realize that whoever's appointing them or voting for them, these people need to be objectively upholding the law, and they can't just put their moral spin on it every
Hmm.
time.
Yeah, I guess to kind of tie all of this together as far as like not knowing what time it is, not even being aware that there's a clock. Something that's really frustrating. We're seeing this with the response to, there's like people on the left are decrying Islamophobia, people on the right are decrying anti-Semitism, and it's true. I mean, obviously, was the driving ideology of these shooters in the Bondi Beach shooting, the massacre at this point. Um, Something that's really frustrating to see. You're talking about representing constituents, representing their grievances here, is we're seeing in the United States and really across the West is sort of this anti-white ideology where, and it's a lot of white liberals pushing this forward, is like the self-hatred that we alluded to. It's really frustrating that it seems like any injustice, any sort of any sort of hatred, any sort of what's the word I'm looking for, any sort of these things is addressed right away. They're saying, okay, we'll get right on that. We're going to ensure this never happens. But with the self hatred that's perpetrated, anytime there's a lot of anti-white sentiment, it seems to be kind of ignored, and you're lambasted and called like an evil racist when we're not saying anyone's superior anything. We're just saying like, look, this is clearly a motivation for a lot of these attacks. I mean, the Arena Zarutska incident comes to mind right away. But you're even seeing this rhetoric echoed and parroted on the national stage when we saw Zoran Mamdani saying that he wanted to tax white neighborhoods at a higher rate. Does this seem to tie all in with sort of the self hatred that we're seeing? Because again, the things pushing this is a lot of white liberals, quite frankly.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, these are white liberals who don't believe in God at this point, right? These are white liberals who think that religion is the root of all evil, and that everything bad that happens in the world is the result of, probably Christianity, which is crazy because it's legit a religion of peace. But yeah, I think that the white self-hatred is part of it. And also there's this idea that because we have past discrimination, we can correct that with discrimination in the present. And that has been ruled. There was a judge during the Biden administration who said, hey, agriculture department, you can't give loans specifically to Black farmers because you cannot correct past discrimination with present discrimination. And that was a story that was pretty under the radar, but I think that it was a really important story, and that it really should have gotten a lot more play, because that is the truth. There's no reason to say that, any child or any person is specifically at fault because of their skin color. I, for one, am tired of hearing about white privilege. And the stats don't back it up. If you look, there's plenty of poor, broke down white people. in this country, and they deserve to have the same opportunities as everybody else, whether it's loans or housing or jobs, education, not having fentanyl pumped into their
Mhm.
communities, whatever it is. But yeah, there is a hatred there, and there's no reason to hate white people just because they were in the majority for a long time. And now there's all of this pushback against the idea, and there has been for a while, that so the going wisdom was that white people would be the minority pretty soon. And that was, everyone was super excited about that. It was like, yay, that's diversity, is getting rid of all the white people. And then if white people said, hey, you're looking to replace us, they'd be like, no.
Right.
And they wouldn't even admit that they were excited about it. Now you have Jasmine Crockett, Ilhan Omar, take your pick of people saying that, continuing to say white people are the problem. You had Albanese in Australia talking about how right wing extremism is a big problem, even after some Islamic extremists shot up a bunch of Jewish people on the beach. He's saying, there's a rise of right wing extremism in Australia. What does that have to do with anything, Mr. Prime Minister?
Right.
Are you seriously kidding me right now? Is
Yeah.
that what you're going for? But yeah, we have to stop hating ourselves, and we have to stop being afraid to speak up and say, perhaps diversity in and of itself is not a strength. Perhaps the strength is when people of diverse backgrounds can come together and share the same American values and freedoms.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, Libby, thank you so much for hopping on here to discuss this. Where can people find you to get more?
You can find me at Libby Emmons on Twitter, and of course at thepostmillennial.com and humanevents.com. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Libby. See you later.
See you.
Alrighty. Well, that was the great Libby Emmons. That was yeah, very, very important point. It goes without saying. You see this thing where they're like, oh, the Great Replacement is a white supremacist conspiracy theory. That's not what's happening. What's happening is, and then they outline every single thing that falls in line with what people are saying when they're talking about being replaced. It's really really just we got to know what time it is, folks. That's all I got to say on that. But with that, we're going to wind down. We're going to wind down the show. We are going to be rating Devori Darkins. I think Kellen's got that ready to go. Thank you very much for watching. We will be back tonight for Timcast IRL at 8 p.m. Eastern, live from Las Vegas. We'll be in this same studio. As you can see, we got the background back here. It's going to be a great show. With that, you can find me on X and Instagram at Real Tate Brown. Come give me a follow there. I'll be giving you guys updates from Vegas, the happenings as they occur. And with that, we will be back tomorrow for another installment of the Timcast News Live Hour. Thank you very much for watching.